quickly do a short recap of what we saw last time, and we'll get started from where we left. Yeah, so last time we actually talked about the type of business APIs. So we saw the API, the type of API where the API is the actual product, the API projected the product, the API promoted the product, and finally the API actually powered and fed the product. So we went into the types of revenues an API gets, direct and indirect. After that, we went into each category of an API. So 4 categories we saw. We went into each category. So now what we'll do is we'll actually talk about the various business models of APIs. So and APIs.
Hey, one quick question, Sanjay. One quick question. What did you mean by projects the product? What does it mean?
Yeah. So let me just take this. So it extends the functionality to a different place, for example. So Salesforce is an example for this. So their API actually, their main aim is actually to like keep the data and maybe structure it for within this. So, but if they want to give the product to another person, like the data to another person, they're actually extending the functionality of their main product. So the API here projects the product actually. So we are able to connect to Salesforce data, right? Even though we're a third-party company, something like that. So this is how they actually allow us to like connect to their data, and even though it's not their main functionality, it's something they do.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is the same sort of data of that product is available elsewhere, right? Is that the meaning there?
Not exactly. Same sort of data means if someone's using Salesforce and they want to share their data with someone else, so Salesforce gives us the option, right? So Salesforce
the extendability that you're talking about.
Yeah. So the functionality, that functionality Salesforce gives, because that helps actually it increases the number of people who will join, because they have more flexibility with the data they have. So that's one point which is like unique to them, and it's something which will attract new customers and stuff. And based on this functionality, a lot of other new services pop up. So ours is one good example for that, right? Because they provide us that data, we can do something with that data. And that's how they actually cultivate this ecosystem of partners.
Correct, yeah. So basically, so for example, let's say Salesforce data is being used in some other tool, right? So instead of them having to capture that information from Salesforce every time, through APIs, they can get that data in the other application. So it's almost like, it's there, right? So even in Tableau for that matter, right? So you have the facility by which you could sort of get that data into, let's say, Salesforce, right? Then we are able to use it, isn't it? Yeah. So that, okay, please, wonderful.
Just to add to that, I believe Google Maps also has an API with a similar functionality. We can connect using that API. We can download the geolocation, distance data, and so on. We can analyze that data in other softwares such as R or Python using that by downloading data via that API.
Yeah. I think we'll actually talk about that also today. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, it's there in one of the business models.
Okay.
So now what we'll do is actually we'll look at all the different types of business models. So API, sometimes that's the main thing that the company does. It's their main way of getting money. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's some secondary thing which more like powers the primary function of the company. So what we'll do is we'll look at various ways companies actually profit from this, or sometimes they don't also. So the first business model is the free business model. So for an example, like a really good example of that is the Facebook's Like API. So we would have noticed this. Almost any website we see, it will have a button for us to actually click and like that page in Facebook directly from that website. So why does Facebook actually do this? It's not like doing this gets them some percentage of their income or something like that. What it does is it shows that Facebook is the main dominant force in that sector. So when it comes to maybe social media recognition or something, when every other website or every other company actually uses Facebook, it creates an at least thought in the mind of the user to think that if I want my brand to be recognized, I need Facebook for it. It creates a need for Facebook, and it promotes Facebook also without any extra charges. They don't need to actually give ads or something. People are freely advertising Facebook by simply putting an icon on their website to like their page. So that's one of the main reasons why this free business model exists. So these are a few facts. These are slightly outdated, I suppose, 3-4 years. So per day, these Facebook like APIs get 2.7 billion likes, and every day more than 1,000 websites actually adds their like button to their website. So the next main type is where the developer actually pays. So when we looked at the free model, the developer or the website owner didn't have to pay anything to use the service. But when it comes to developer pays, the person will actually have to, like the developer who's using it will actually have to pay the service which is providing the API. So there are mainly 5 different types in this category where the developer pays. The first one is pay as you go. So one really good example is Amazon Web Services. So we'll actually take a look into each of these categories as we go on. So the first one is pay as you go. The next one is tiered. So tiered, like there will be different levels of packages. Some package they'll give a X number of API calls, and the next package expects Y amount of API calls, something like that. The third one is premium. In this premium, this is a very popular way in which APIs work. So in premium, similar to, for example, Spotify. Spotify, not the API, but the service, it has a premium service, right? So you can listen to music, but you can't change the track, like in the playlist, you can't change the track more than 3 or 4 times. Like you can only, you have some control only, and you have ads also. If you don't want that, if you want a really good experience and a full-fledged experience of your ecosystem, you'll have to pay a little. So that's what these API services also do. So in this, they will give the service free for a small company, for example, and as this company scales up, they might require a higher number of calls or something like that, and they'll have to pay for that. The next is unit-based. So this Google AdWords is a really good example for unit-based. So in Google AdWords, what we do is we pay per click, and many different services actually use this mechanism. So now we've been working on Sparkfoot, for example. There, it's not pay per click also; it is pay per conversion itself. So there are different units which can be the main metric for actually charging the customer. So per click is one, per conversion is the other. Per view also people do, per view and per impression. And if you've actually noticed Facebook ads or YouTube ads, they have, if the person watches 25% of the video, they have one amount you have to pay. If they watch 50%, it's another, 75% another. So that also is a different type of unit-based method. So we'll be paying in units like this. The final type is actually a transaction fee. PayPal is a really good example, and almost all the financial service, like the authentication, card authentication services like Razorpay, I think lots are there now. PayPal, Paytm also, I think Paytm uses JustPay or something like that. So that's also uses JustPay. So all these actually take a transaction fee. So similar to cards, they take 1.5%, something like that. So they also use some percentage of the transaction fee as a charge. Yeah. So we'll first look at the example of Twilio. So a little bit of Twilio, it's used to send text messages. So large companies, if they want to maybe send generic text messages or do something similar to that, they instead of actually doing it manually, they can use this API to send out messages, large number of messages, thousands, lakhs, millions, like that, and they're billed at $0.01. So it's almost a cent, and for every outbound SMS. So how many ever messages they use, they'll pay that much into X into this price. Rome to Romeo is a map API service, so it provides the similar to Google Maps. A lot of, for example, Zomato, for example, it actually embeds a map within their software, right? Zomato, Swiggy, all of these companies, even Uber. So all of these companies need not have their own database for maps, or they need not have this data. So what companies like this do is, when a third-party developer actually wants to know a particular location or wants to search a particular location, they can send a call to this third-party software, and they'll send back the information. So if you type in an address and you search, this will a call will go to this Rome to Rio some kind API, and it will send back the latitude and longitude, for example. So they charge a particular amount for this also, and this is another example for a developer who pays as he does the number of transactions. So next we look at the tiered pricing. So MailChimp and WorldMate are a really good example for this. So MailChimp is used for email marketing. A lot of large companies use email marketing as a way to promote their business. And MailChimp is one software which actually lets them do this large-scale email marketing campaigns. So in this mail, so I'm not sure if this is visible, the exact numbers. I'll maybe I'll read it out loud. So the first category in this MailChimp thing is free, and up to 12,000 mails per month. That is that they provide for free. But if you want anything more, for example, it's $10 for up to 40K emails per month, and they have different after this limit kind of thing. For the next 100K, it's 0.9 per thousand. So they have tiers, 0.65, 0.45, 0.4. So their strategy is like decreasing the per unit price as the number of emails increase, and this is one example of the tiered pricing. So WorldMate also does something pretty similar to this, and this is how the tiered pricing mechanism works. So as I was talking about, Google Maps actually provides a premium kind of service. So Google Maps API, a lot of small companies can actually use it for free. But Google Maps API for business is also there, which is like it gives a lot more information and lot more number of calls per day, or so it allows the business to actually get a lot more number of requests, or direction requests, or distance requests, or location requests, street view requests. All this, it actually gives a much higher amount of service for the service which is in which the business is paying. While for the free version, they give something, and it's good enough for a lot of small businesses. And one main reason they do this premium kind of thing is because as the business, for example, grows, they might require a higher band, and when the business initially actually stuck with Google Maps API, for example, it might actually have a much larger switching cost later in the future. So this kind of forces, not exactly forces, but it kind of forces the company to stick with Google Maps API even when they scale up a lot. So that's one of the main reasons this premium service exists. And the next final one is unit-based pricing. So in unit-based pricing, Sprint is a mobile telecom service provider in the US, and they also have APIs, and they have APIs for sending SMSs for giving location. So geofence is like an approximate location. Like it will be very large, so it won't be very accurate. But this LBS approximate precision and approximate are actually more exact services, like more exact locations. So Sprint will actually provide this data for a charge. So they charge 6 credits. So credits they'll have different packages kind of things. So similar to a lot of I think games nowadays. So if you've noticed, a lot of games nowadays they're free to buy on free to play on the App Store. You can download it and you can play it for free. But there's a lot of stuff like if you want this weapon or if you want this color of a shirt, for example, you have to pay this much credits. And these credits you can earn, but it's very hard to earn by playing the game itself. But you can easily earn it for a small amount. So it kind of drives the person to actually get into the practice of actually getting these extra stuff from the app. And this is how mainly the gaming company actually profits off of this. So something similar to that, this Sprint also does. It sells some 20K credits for $100, and for 6 credits you can get the exact precise location. You can send SMSs for 4 credits, MMSs for 6 credits, and they provide some stuff for free. But the other stuff they'll have to pay, and this payment is based on these credits. So this is unit-based pricing. So finally, the developer pays condition. So in this developer pays condition, what happens is, so as I told, PayPal, Stripe, Authorize.net, all these are like payment authorization companies. So all these companies, they charge some percentage of the transaction, and sometimes even they charge a small amount which is fixed. So this is because when there are a lot of small transactions, they might not get a large enough amount per transaction. If it's just 3% and I'm sending $1 every transaction, the company will be getting 3 cents. So that is that will be a very small amount, and that's one reason why they put in a small fixed charge. So larger it gets, it becomes bigger, but it's still viable when the transaction is extremely small also. Yeah, so now we have actually looked at all the conditions where the developer actually paid, but there are APIs where the developer gets paid for actually using the API. So this is pretty interesting. So there are a lot of companies. One example is AdSense. Amazon is a very good example. So all these companies, what they do is they'll pay the developer for actually embedding their API or maybe API or ads or something like that in their website. So there is so I'll maybe give a little bit context. So let us take the example of Amazon. So Amazon, we all know that the main they're mainly a marketplace. They want to sell as much product as possible. So what they do is they don't simply pay for ads in Google, for example. What they do is they target particular sites. So we read a lot of blogs. For example, we before we buy a mobile, we read a lot about a mobile, right? So we'll go into Digit, for example, which is a magazine which gives us ratings of mobiles and stuff like that. We go there, we look into it, and we see, okay, this mobile is good, this mobile is bad. So what Amazon does is it will target websites like this, and it will actually ask the website to display its ads using its API, and for each click or an action, like action in this case can be a transaction for Amazon. So for each transaction, Amazon will actually be paying the website a small amount of money. So this is why the company actually needs an API. Google AdSense also does something similar. So in Google AdSense, Google, other than the search ads, it also displays ads within websites also. So Google doesn't actually display its own ads, but it displays other relevant ads for which people are paying Google to do, and they will actually display the ads in tertiary websites. So this is why the developer actually gets paid. And in this type of revenue model, like there is revenue sharing, and there are methods like click per action, click per cost per click, cost per action, and some referral things also. So if someone joins my website using your API, I'll give you a percentage of the commission. So nowadays, actually, a lot of the streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, all these actually use this sign up referral thing. So we sign up from some website which actually uses a coupon, for example, a small discount, and we actually click that banner or something like that, and we get into Netflix or Prime, and we sign up. So what they will do is they sometimes give a one-time payment to this third-party website, or they actually have recurring payments also. So every month I stay with Netflix, they get a percentage of my revenue, like they get a percentage of how much I am paying Netflix. So these are the main types of business models within the category of the developer getting paid. So yeah, so now we'll look at the revenue share model in a little. We'll look at it briefly. So Google AdSense uses this revenue share model. So what Google AdSense does is, as I've explained, it allows publishers like the websites and blogs to actually show or publish images, videos, texts, all this stuff targeting a particular kind of audience, and for each click or each impression that the website gets, Google actually gives them a share. So it splits the revenue with the publishers who are displaying their ads. So Google is not the person who is actually like, it's not Google's ads they are publishing. So Google's like a third party here. So it takes it actually accumulates data about all people who want ads, and it chooses which company's ad goes where, and it actually splits that money with the company which is actually doing the publishing of the ad. So this is an example where the revenue has been shared with the company. Yeah, one moment. Yeah. One moment, I think my laptop is, and I'll stop sharing and I'll reshare in a moment. I'm sorry, is my screen visible?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, great. Oh, something. I'm not able to change it when it's sharing.
I think it changed just a while back before you made it full screen.
Okay, I'll quit full screen alone.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. I'll quit full screen. Yeah, is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I left right here, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the second type is the developer get gets paid. So we talked about it briefly. So Amazon product advertising API actually uses this. So it's cost per action here, and we can actually look at the prices actually Amazon pays. So here also it's a percentage of the fee only, but it's only when the action is successful. So it's not simply when someone clicks it and leaves it, or someone just views the ad. It's when the purchase has been actually made. So the rates are like 4% for electronic products. So Amazon MP3 products is 5%, videos it's 10%. So the ones where they have higher margin, they actually are giving a higher percentage of the revenue as a fee. The grocery products, as expected, it's low because the margins are already pretty low. Magazines, the margins are high, it's 25% here. So they give a relevant percentage which makes sense for them from the business standpoint as a fee to the developer. So next we'll actually talk about the cost per click. So for this, Expedia is a really good example. So Expedia's API, if you have seen it allows Expedia to be Expedia's search results and the portals or services which are available in Expedia to be shown in other aggregators, hotel aggregators, or hotel websites where people search for travel and stuff. So what this does is not only is Expedia using its own website for getting generating views and conversions for their customers, and customers I mean the hotel owners in this case. So they will be now available on different sites also. So Expedia's listings will be available in Trivago, for example. So for that, they actually provide the API, and actually almost most of Expedia's like revenue nowadays comes from not from their main website, but through these APIs only. So it kind of tells us how important these APIs have become nowadays and how useful and vital for a business it can be. Because when Expedia started out, it was solely focused on its own website and whatever views it can generate from it. But now it's able to get almost all of its revenue from third-party websites using its own API. And that's why the API is a very, very important tool in this modern age. So I think it's time, and I'm almost done. I'll maybe just finish this last one up, and we'll continue with the other stuff in the next one. So the final type is the recurring revenue share. So a company called Radio, which is a company which gives these something similar to Spotify, but just the web radio kind of thing. So we don't need an actual radio antenna to get radio services, right? So we have a lot of apps in our phone which actually, even though you don't plug in your earphone which acts as an antenna for the radio, you can use the internet to actually listen to the radio, right? So our radio is a service which provides that service to developers. And another example is also Spotify service also. So Spotify service, what it does is, so if you have noticed this nowadays, this cooking websites, I'm not sure if anyone has noticed this, but I noticed this in NDTV Food or something like that. It has an option when you look at the recipe, it'll have a play music option embedded within the website. So what I think NDTV has Ghana, I'm not sure which added into it, but it's similar to what Spotify does also. So it will embed it into that cooking website or something like that, and when someone plays, they get a stream and they get brand recognition and even customers also. So every time they get a conversion because of this, they'll be doing a recovering revenue share for the website it's publishing. Yeah, so that's it for today.